In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are live.
Hi, and welcome to the Great Fantasy Bake Off. It's Friday night UK time. I'm told it's early Saturday morning New Zealand time, and our tech person is not entirely pleased with this. So if there's any issues, it's entirely his fault because he hasn't had enough coffee yet. But we are live, we are here, and we are talking cakes. There can be only one Lord of the Cakes, and I'm ridiculously proud of that. My name's Anna Smith-Spark. I'm the author of the grimdark epic fantasy trilogy, the Empires of Dust, the Court of Broken Knives, the Tower of Living and Dying, and the House of Sacrifice, which contains so many food references. I actually have someone created a recipe and 2 drinks based on my books. One of the cake recipe is cakes that are made in the book, and every ingredient is mentioned in the books, which obviously means they're delicious. They're all ingredients that I like, so I'm extremely proud of that. I can't actually bake myself very well, but I do love baking. And I have no idea whether my lovely participants can bake, but they can certainly write, and they certainly like to bake. So we shall see. So I shall get them to introduce themselves because they'll be far better than I am. So we'll just go from the order I can see on my screen, which is Megan first.
Awesome. Well, I'm Megan Haskell. I'm the award-winning author of the Senyari Chronicles, and I write tales of myth, magic, and mayhem featuring kick-ass heroines and mythological monsters of every shape and size. And my upcoming release, which launches on May 3rd, features a bartender. So that's where I'm coming from on this one. Lots of drinks.
So Anita.
Okay, I'm Anita Stewart. I write under A.F. Stewart. I've written the Saga of the Outer Islands trilogy, and most of my fiction is very dark and stabby. And I also write horror and poetry, and I do write a lot of food into my books, and my characters seem to drink quite a lot, so there is quite a lot of alcohol in there as well.
And Rachel.
I'm Rachel Rener. I'm a contemporary fantasy author. I love blurring the lines between science and magic, so that's kind of my spiel. My characters are normally running around so much they don't have time to eat, sort of like me. My husband actually just came in a few minutes ago and asked me if I ate lunch, to which I replied, "Oh, crud." My most recent book, though, is inked, and there's definitely some imbibing in there, but normally in the form of tequila. So no great recipes, but I can cook. Usually. I can cook.
And Olivia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia. I am a fantasy writer from the San Francisco Bay Area. Currently, I don't have anything published. I'm in what we call the querying trenches. But I know. But the current book I'm writing is actually a food fantasy, loosely based on my own culture, so my Azorian roots. So very exciting, and that one will eventually also be in the trenches, but not yet.
Okay, before we begin, I've got to ask, what is a food fantasy?
So,
I mean, it sounds fun, but what is it?
Yes, well, because my main character, she has actually food-based magic. So she was born with the ability to basically make every dish she has like perfect. There's a dark flip side to that, but I don't want to spoil anything. But the main part's the food. So it's a lot of cooking and a lot of mention of food and people eating in my book.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, one of the, yes, that leads us beautifully to kind of my intro. Thank you, Olivia. There is a lot of food in fantasy, particularly the kind of, high epic fantasy I like. The grimdark tavern scene where we are served a truly unspeakably disgusting, vile bowl of stew. There's always an inn, and it's always full of people, and the food and the beer is absolutely undrinkable and absolutely uneatable. And no one knows how this even keeps going, but it's the stalwart of all fantasy, all grimdark fantasy. to the high elven banquets of Tolkien, elves sitting beneath the trees in the twilight, eating, yes, as we've just heard, food from your wildest dreams, food that is just perfect, delicious. There's, the food of different cultures, it's a traveling part of fantasy, exploring the world, different foods, different clothes, different situations, different amazing fantasy cities where they eat food that one has never imagined before. There's a whole lot of stuff that we could talk about food, about all the really horrible political stuff about food, the way that food in fantasy reinforces racial stereotypes and racism and racial tropes, the way obviously the busty wench cooking the meat while our red-blooded heroes eat the meat, which obviously has infinite problems around gender roles, the whole notion of Western food in fantasy as opposed to kind of that weird foreign food that is just so intensely problematic in kind of the kind of high fantasy that I'm writing in. And we could talk about that for hours, but we're not going to talk about that because it's Friday. For me, it's Friday night and the world's just kind of hell in a handcart. So we're going to talk about good things. So I've set my finalists some challenges and we're going to talk about the good things of food. So for my first question is your favorite food stuff in all fantasy. Does any fantasy book you've ever read? In fact, I'm going to take it to any fantasy film you've ever seen. Your favorite food stuff in fantasy. So I'm going to just simply reverse the way I was going. And I will I'll reverse the order I did people to introduce themselves in. So I'll start with Olivia. Your favorite food stuff in fantasy?
Food stuff. Does this include like food tropes?
Oh yeah, they're going to do food stuff and scene featuring people eating. So yeah, food stuff or food trope. Just kind of, yeah, food stuff or food trope rather than a scene.
Okay. Food stuff. I don't know why this is always so funny for me. Maybe others on the panel will relate. I actually love the food trope where someone's like trying to eat, but then someone comes in and just completely destroys the meal, and then they're either like screaming like my stew, or like in Avatar: Last Airbender it was like my cabbages, and they just like cry out and their food gets destroyed and you're just like, oh no, your dish. I don't know why, I just always love that trope. So I don't know what the technical name for it is, but I guess the food just gets destroyed and protagonist is so devastated.
Foodus interruptus.
Thank you so much. I did not.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. The panel's over. We have a winner.
Love it.
Foodus interruptus. Okay, Rachel.
I was gonna say I'm just gonna leave on a high note and well, as I mentioned in my introduction, food for me, as much as I love it, and I spend a lot of time making big dinners and on the weekends, but during the week when I'm writing, food is kind of a pain in the butt. And I don't want to go and cook. I don't want to have to go make lunch. I often forget to eat lunch. 6:30 rolls around. I'm like right in the middle of a scene and I have to make dinner. So my favorite food stuff would definitely have to be lembas bread from Lord of the Rings, because I would love to just be able to like reach into my drawer, grab my lembas bread, take a bite of it, be done for the next 24 hours and not need more food. And I actually have this book. It's recipes from the world of Tolkien, and they have a recipe for lembas bread in here. Look, see? It is a little bit more like maybe cookie than nutrition. It looks like actually it's flour and cornmeal and and Parmesan cheese and parsley leaves. And actually that sounds delicious. Check that. Can you see it? Can you see the ingredients? It looks really good actually.
Cornmeal, salt, baking powder, sugar, Parmesan cheese, parsley, 1 red chili, olive oil, eggs, buttermilk. Ooh.
If I was a better panelist, I would have cooked this before this panel. Now I'm kicking myself because it sounds really good.
Well, then we would have all drooled while you ate it.
That's true. That's true. Next year.
We now need the cut scene in Lord of the Rings where Sam eats lembas bread, and because we know Sam, while he is a very heroic character, is also fundamentally deeply xenophobic and would just want to stay in his house, only meeting people of his own kind forever. So we have obviously missing the scene where he bites into the lembas bread and he's spicy. Someone else fetch him a quick glass of milk, but wow, and I think someone needs to put a link to that book in the chat at some point because that is awesome. I did not know that book existed, but it is awesome. Okay, so far we have the interruption of the cooking in cabbages and lembas bread. So Anissa, foodists interrupt us and the miracle that is lembas bread. What are you going to?
I'm old school, as you can see by my nice ale mug. So I'm with the tavern stew and the scenes, and you can find several stew recipes in this one, the unofficial Game of Thrones cookbook. So yeah, because I mean, I like that. I like the fact the traveler comes into the tavern, orders the stew, hopefully a good bowl of stew and not the grimdark stew you can't stomach. Because, I mean, if I was going to write a tavern scene, they'd have good stew. That would be the reason the tavern exists, because their stew is like 5 stars, And so that's me. That's old school stew, ale, and some good stout bread, brown bread and butter to go with it.
Hopefully not having been interrupted by someone rushing in. But, yeah.
Well, in the tavern, you might, fights break out all the time. The guy would be putting his arm around, protecting his stew.
That would be me.
It's like, stay away, I'm eating here.
Actually, we've just had AM Justice has just put in the comments bowl of brown, which is yeah, we all know. I think we all probably all know that bowl of brown. Yeah. So, cool. They found the links to the Lord of the Rings cookbook as well. So excellent. So
great.
Cool. So Megan, your favourite. So we've had bowl of brown, we've had interruption cooking the cabbages, and we have lembas bread. So what's your favourite food stuff or food trope?
So my favorite food trope is more the preparation of the meal, because for me, what I love is, like, especially you've got, a character on this quest and it's really hard and they're, sleeping on the ground at night. And then they come into the tavern and they see the cook in the back preparing the food, and the warmth and the comfort of that, and the sharing of that communal feeling, that communal food. So for me, it's all about that care, the care that goes into a good meal, whatever that is. And so sometimes it's, the protagonist cooking or making a meal. Sometimes it's another character, or, even just, unnamed innkeeper, but having that really nice, comforting, welcoming enjoyment that just makes you feel good. I like to feel good. since that's what this panel is today, we're gonna feel good.
Those are some excellent things. I should just say to the audience, we will be taking questions at the end, and I really hope people have some questions, because I'm going to run out of questions otherwise, so please have some questions ready. But we're going to go through some questions first that I've got prepared. So the next question I prepared from panelists prepare is their favourite scene featuring food. So I want the name of a book or a film, if you really want to stretch it. But I want to talk about, a scene that food is heavily involved in and that you just love. So I'll just sort of talk about mine quickly, which are actually, so first of all, on a happy, positive note, the kind of, in the Paladin's Legacy series by Elizabeth Moon, there's just this really cool scene with Doreen Berakai, who is completely underrated as an absolutely top 10 fantasy hero. She is this resolutely middle-aged single woman who strides around being a warrior mage. She single-handedly defeats all the bad guys, all the evil mages, saves everybody else, all the hapless men she saves. She totally kicks ass. Then she heals everybody's wounds. Then she cooks everybody a nutritious, high in fresh vegetables and fibre and protein, yet also very tasty fry for breakfast the next morning. I love that scene. And actually also, I've been watching the Lord of the Rings films with my son 3 times now, which is quite cool. But the little scene with the orcs when they're taking Merry and Pippin back to Isengard, and they have a bit of fight, and they're like, can't we just eat their legs? I'm going to miss their legs. I've been eating nothing but maggoty bread for 3 days now. Can't we just eat their legs? And I love that scene. It's so kind of true about anyone who's had a really bad day at work, actually. And we've probably all been there when we're hungry. Can't we just eat their legs? Look, come on. I know they said they keep them alive, but no one's going to miss their legs, are they? So, okay, I'm now going to have to find a different order to go people on. So, Anita, what is your favourite scene featuring food in the whole of fantasy, and why?
I gotta go with Dragon Riders of Pern, Master Robinson, and the bubbly pies. It's just, I don't know what it is about those little pies that he loves so much, and I think Pimer also loves them as well. They're just stuck in my head because it's just tiny little pies with fruit just bubbling out of them. And it's just like, makes my mouth water every time I read that. It's just, I don't know, but it is.
So if someone hasn't read the Dragon Riders of Pern, can you just expand a bit on these pies? Because they do sound very fine pies.
Yeah, well, they're kind of like this staple thing in all the holds on Pern, which is, it's kind of like a medieval thing, sort of a setting. And they're just like mini pies, like mini fruit pies. And they've got this, they're right hot out of the oven, fruit bubbling off the top. And they're just like, they seem like perfection because everybody in the whole of Pern loves these pies. It's like, I don't know what's in them, but they're just, everyone loves them. And it just stuck with me. It's like, I want that pie, you know?
Who doesn't love a good fruit pie though? I mean,
Yeah.
they just, yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
okay. Rachel, your favorite food scene in the whole of fantasy, and why?
Well, one of my absolute favorite authors is Annette Marie. She's kind of the queen of urban modern fantasy, and she has the series. It's Guild Codex, but this is sort of like a spin-off Demonized series. And it has kind of like a mousy protagonist, and she loves to bake. And the series basically starts out, she just went through tragedy. She's like sneaking down to the basement of like her kind of weird, creepy uncle's house where a demon actually happens to be trapped under a bubble. But there are a lot of books down there, so she sort of disregards the demon underneath this bubble that's in there, and she's reading her books, and she has a plate full of cookies that she just made from scratch, and one of them rolls into the bubble where the demon is, and from there they actually forge an agreement that he will help her because he eventually has to save her life in exchange for baked goods. And that whole relationship with this like terrifying demon and this like little mousy sort of like librarian type character starts because of that cookie that rolled from her plate and into his trap. And from there, the series just gets a lot better. So I would say that that's probably my favorite.
That is fairly awesome, actually. It is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, Olivia, your favorite scene featuring food in any fantasy book or film?
Oh man, there could be a lot of like, there's some good classics. I'm actually, well, this is a throwback for me. When I was younger, I used to really love the Edge Chronicles. If no one's ever read this series, please give it a shot if you don't mind reading middle grade fantasy. But there's a scene, I might just quickly say what's in it. I remember reading it as a kid and I still remembered like, wow, this is just a feast. I would love it. Like, please, I wish this existed kind of thing. And in it, there's like, gonna just quickly skim. There's like a Tilder sausage soup. I don't know what Tilder is, but I would love to have it. I'm guessing it's like typical sausage. There's like Hamel horn steak, so it's like the most luxurious, I guess, juiciest steak you can think of, and this tangy blue salad. And they mention like biscuits with treacle and just yummy wood apple cider. So it's just this like really nice evening where they're having this really big luxurious meal. And I remember just wishing I could have that, but it wasn't there for me. So that one just really stuck out in my memory. But another good mention is Akata Witch, because this made me really want Nigerian food, but it's fantasy also. And I just really, really always get hungry reading it.
Cool. I definitely get the impression that food is important to Olivia, which is good. Yeah. No, that's actually that's one of the things I love about fantasy, is that just I talk a lot about fantasy as travel writing, and that experience of other cultures' food and food that you haven't even imagined before, that new tastes, new possibilities in food. It's just another part of that wonderful reason why you read fantasy, just be somewhere else and discover new tastes and things. So Megan, your favorite scene involving food in all fantasy?
So I have two, and they both kind of go back to what I was saying before about the preparation. I think this is why I was thinking about like how like that preparation of food is so important and so interesting, and so comforting. So the first one is actually a sci-fi novel, but it's Quarter Share by Nathan Lowell. And so this scene has stuck with me. I probably read that book at least a decade ago, if not longer. And probably longer. It's probably more like 12 years ago, and this one scene stuck with me because all he's doing is making coffee. That's it. He's just making coffee. But it's this one quote, that I actually wrote it down. So it says, this is from the ship's cook, onboard cook, the cookie. These urns provide the life's blood of the ship, he explained. The whole crew worship at this shrine to caffeine. And for me, because I love coffee, I'm a big coffee person. If I don't have my coffee, I'm not a pleasant person in the morning. And so it just so rang with truth for me. And then the main character, Ishmael, he actually goes on to, he has to clean out these giant urns and make good coffee for the ship. And that's like his test basically for Cookie before he starts working in the galley. And it's like pages of him cleaning out these urns and working through this process of making this coffee. And it just, I don't know, it's for some people, I'm sure it would probably be, very slow, but for me, it was just like, oh yeah, good coffee. Yes. That one really stuck with me. And then the second one that I thought of was pretty immediately was from Discovery of Witches, where Diana is, the main character is she's invited Matthew, who's a vampire, over for dinner, right? But not of the, red liquid kind. And so she's trying to figure out what he can eat, if anything, or what would make sense. And so she goes through this whole process. She ends up deciding that he eats like a wolf. And so she calls a zoologist and she figures out what wolves eat that's not meat, raw meat, basically. And she puts so much thought and effort into creating, like, she brings in nuts and she brings in berries, and these are all things that wolves eat. And then of course wine, because vampires always love wine. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is definitely a thing, I guess, because it's red. But so, she's got to pick out the wine. And again, pages are dedicated to this process of her preparing this meal for him and making it so, unique for him, but also safe for her. and the care and the giving that goes into that meal just always stuck with me as well.
Oh, so these are really, really good answers. It's great. And you actually made me really crave a cup of coffee now. So, so the next challenge I set my 4 bakers was to find an item of food in their own books and persuade me why, at my next dinner party, I should have this food item as the main course at my dinner party. And also the 4 characters they can think of, who can be from their own books or can be from other people's books. Just any 4 characters who should eat this food with me. So I'm now going to have to work out which order to go in. Who went? Anita, you started last time, didn't you? I think, did you? Okay, Rachel, I'm going to start with you. Rachel.
I knew you were going to do that. I didn't do my homework on this one. I have so much to talk about in other areas. I didn't do my homework.
Okay, does someone nobly want to start first?
Someone tag
Megan.
in.
I can go if you want.
Okay, Anita, do you want to nobly go first? Well, Rachel currently
Okay,
reads my
because I
book.
kind of went overboard, so I can compensate for Rachel.
Okay.
Thank you. I love when people
Because I
compensate for
made an
me.
entire menu plan for the entire day.
Perfect. You get my turn.
So for breakfast, you get sausage and bacon. Because I went historical fantasy because a lot of my stuff is historical fantasy. So you get sausage and bacon, poached eggs and cream sauce, pancakes, toast and jam, corn muffins and marmalade, and a pot of tea. For lunch, this is from my contemporary fantasy, you get green salad, broccoli and chicken casserole, red wine, because all my characters drink, and sliced melon for dessert. And then you have tea, of course, because all my historical fantasies take place in Britain for some reason.
We do have tea, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very
you
important to tea, yes.
cucumber sandwiches. You get scones with clotted cream or jam or both, whatever you want. Assorted cakes. Then you have Darjeeling tea, and that is liberally spiked with whiskey, rum, or brandy. Your choice. And then for dinner, we have lobster, veal chops or roast beef, roasted potatoes with thyme, triple layer chocolate sponge cake with a chocolate cream filling and a chocolate buttercream frosting, more red wine, and homemade mead, which will go with the dessert.
Yeah, I want to be a character in one of your books with that. Please.
Okay, and the guests at the all-day dinner party are Tyrion Lannister, because you have to have someone witty at your party to keep everyone entertained. Geralt of Rivia, because I want to see his reaction when he eats broccoli. Karen Murphy from the Dresden Files, because you got to have somebody normal to talk to. And the Wicked Witch of the West, because nobody invites her to dinner parties. And, I want to know about flying monkeys. So there you go.
Wow. Wow.
Well done.
Well done. I think someone may be
Love it.
asking, do your characters eat like this for every meal? This is awesome. One of the main members.
Not for every meal, but because I did kind of pick and choose from different books to make a fantasy meal. But yeah, all those recipes are in my book somewhere. Although a few of them are in a book that has not yet been published. So
I was going to say, I think I'll need every orc in Mordor to join me eating that lot. But wow, that does sound. I have to say that one of
my characters cooks when he's nervous, so that's why there's a lot of food, because he's sort of like the minor wizard and he has no idea what he's doing, so he's nervous a lot, so he cooks a lot.
Pancakes with Tyrion Lannister, I have to say, does sound that does sound mighty fine, actually. Yes, mighty fine. Okay, Olivia, I want your why I should sacrifice this pancakes with Tyrion Lannister for.
Oh, that spread is kind of hard to beat, but
Yeah.
From the food book, I am writing. What's tricky is there's a lot of different meals, but I tried to pick just one, just a scene that's kind of living in my head at the moment. And the meal is supposed to be, well, in this case, I guess it's going to be for a birthday party, but in general, it's kind of like a fusion, real world equivalent. It would be the fusion between like Portuguese food and kind of Caribbean for this particular meal. So if you like any of that, the first is kind of like there's 4 courses. So like the first is kind of like a shrimp ceviche. It has like avocados, onions, jalapeno, mango, just all kind of tossed together with lime and lemon. The second is a soup course. That's kind of like it's like a Portuguese style gazpacho, because we also like gazpacho. So it's like kind of tomatoey, but it's more smooth. And then it has like good olive oil on the top. Yes.
I would take that through an IV if I could.
Yes. Oh, I love soup. I had to have a soup course.
Me too.
The main is like a Portuguese style fried fish, and it's been kind of butterflied open. So inside kind of has like a sofrito. So it's kind of like a mix of tomatoes, onions, some other veggies, all kind of stewed down and caramelized, all on top with like crispy plantain chips. And then the last bit for dessert is a guava iced cream with coconut and passion fruit syrup. So it's kind of like the vibe I'm going for in that one.
Oh. So who am I eating this feast with? Who am I eating this feast with? Who have I got? Who are my guests?
I wish I could say I was hip and happening and I would have an answer of like characters from other books, but the meal in question is served for like a king and his two daughters who just love to eat, and also a delegate, like an ambassador from another place. So it's kind of a fancy meal, but at the same time, the king is not so much. I'm trying to break tropes there where he's not like the typical like off with your head, very strict king. He's more kind of actually laid back and would almost rather not have his role. So it's a very casual kind of meal. So that's my meal there.
Brilliant. Okay, Rachel, have you thought of anything?
Nah, last scene I wrote, I mean, my character's Jewish, her mother's Jewish, so there's a lot of manischewitz and brisket. That's great. And there's an incubus there. They all have a great time. They all have a great time. So yeah.
Brisket with incubus.
Yeah,
well, that's
absolutely. I mean, that's what you get if you read my books. You get brisket, cheap Jewish wine, and an incubus.
And limbus bread.
And you do get something that's kind of like limbus bread too. You do. In a certain sexy tent scene, but yeah.
Sexy tent scene with limbus bread.
Yeah. I mean, they're separate. The limbus doesn't have to do with the sexy scene, but they are in the same tent together. I'm gonna stop now before I'm canceled.
No, a brisket and an incubus and a sexy tent scene with limbus bread is.
I'm hungry for more than one thing, Neil. Anyway.
Okay, so we've had some absolutely amazing meals, and these dinner parties are absolutely wonderful. We've had some wonderful conversations about food. I'm going to throw it open a bit. We've had some lovely questions in the live chat as well. So it's a really good question from MV Pine, who wants to ask, what some emotions, feelings, social norms that you love to see food used to portray in your own writing and other people's writing? If that makes sense to the question. So I guess, a lot of it comes from people who've been talking a lot about that kind of caring, that sort of idea of there's sort of long scenes of people preparing food and really making an effort because they care, which is a part of it as well, but really big part of it. But yeah, this kind of emotional use of food to portray emotion. So Megan, do you want to start?
Well, sure. I've already talked about the care, but obviously food can be used as punishment, but we're not going there today because we're keeping things happy and fun.
We can go there if you want.
But you get the prisoner scenes, right, where you've got nothing but moldy bread and water, right? And because food, to me, food is very much integral to that, either that belonging or the outcast, right? Like it's that sense of, are you part of the family or the tribe or the group? Are you being loved and cared for, or are you outsider? Are you being punished? Are you being tortured essentially for food? Because food obviously is life, right? If you don't eat, you die. So let's hope that you can have some good food. So for me, food is very much like, depending on the scene and what I'm writing, it is a component of that feeling of what you're trying to portray for that character, what that character is going through. So if they're feeling great, if they're feeling loved and comforted and wonderful, awesome. If it's a quest and they're only able to eat lembas bread, right? Like then it's a little bit of a deprivation. I mean, lembas bread is still awesome. So there's that.
Yeah.
Awesome. But but you don't get the full big Elvis banquet, right? And then there's the punishment side of it. So it's, I think food definitely portrays what that character is going through and experiencing.
Could I chime in there?
Yes, of course.
So I was thinking actually about Harry Potter and how, you know, he's this orphan who's been living under a closet, and he's going to Hogwarts for the first time. And then the lady comes around with her trolley cart of all those magical foods on there. And that was so kind of building on what Megan said, and also taking a different direction too, is like, it really kind of set the stage and the scene for what he was going to find there in Hogwarts. And I thought that was just so much fun. Like, I would love to have one of those hopping chocolate frogs, or, you know, and this is actually the thing I wanted to bring up was Bertie Bott's every flavor bean. Is that right? You guys know what I'm talking about? In Harry Potter, they have those like jelly beans that are every flavor, and Dumbledore picks up one and it was like a booger or something. Well, I actually found this game, and it's kind of like that. And it's based on jelly beans. And it's so cool because you spin the little wheel. And so you could get, for example, birthday cake or dirty dishwater, or toothpaste or berry, or like coconut and spoiled milk. And I was playing this with my bonus children the other day. It was awful. Really bad. It was every single time I spun this, I had dirty dishwasher, rotten egg, stinky socks. The worst one was barf. That's when I quit. But it's so much fun. And if you hate your children, play this game. Yeah. And meanwhile, they're getting chocolate and I'm getting dog food. Like, how, I don't even know. Anyway, I have so many of them. I thought if we had time at the end, I would try one because I love you. And it's worth it for entertaining people, I guess.
Definitely is.
Hopefully we have enough questions where there's not time at the end, though.
Okay, everyone's asking questions. No more questions. We're going to watch each. I'm actually discussing jelly beans. And actually, I want to talk about that kind of that fantasy and that ridiculous food. Like, yes, someone actually worked out how to make jelly beans taste like bath. I mean, that there's a whole stuff about fancy and food there we could talk about just absurd foods that just foods that aren't foods. But that kind of use of magic in foods. So anyway, where were we? All I can think about is jelly beans that taste like bath now.
I took us on a tangent. I'm guilty of that a lot. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're talking about use of food to kind of talk about emotion in characters.
And I made it about barf. Sorry.
Valid. It's totally valid.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me, Megan. Thank you for seeing me.
Always.
Okay, so it's some use of food, use of kind of emotions, and food being used to portray emotions, and the way that those are kind of linked together in writing, and people asking about good scenes. And so I'm completely lost who's even spoken now. What I can think is bath jelly beans. I'm totally lost. I think Olivia and Anita, you haven't spoken, have you? So Olivia, do you want to talk about that? Scenes involving food and emotion? I get the feeling that you can have quite a long time.
I could probably go on forever, but I'll try to keep it short. Food to convey emotions. I mean, especially, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, especially writing the story I personally am, it's definitely been a journey in like thinking about how food can be connected to culture. But even, I guess, if it's fantasy, it's the culture of the fantasy, like what food can bring out a lot of emotions. And it's just so, I don't know, I always try to go for comfort, not necessarily. It's an interesting point though, because it got me thinking about like how other authors have like written food to be kind of this thing that like you want it, but then it's not always a pleasant experience. But I always try to give it a pleasant experience because I just love, that's so bad, I love getting hungry when I'm eating. So it's just, I love being able to think about how how to just make people happy and more invested in what you're doing, I guess. So I think, to be a little short, I think food could be a great way to just bring people in, bring them to the slice of world that you want to show. Because it can say a lot even about the world in which the story is written to. So I don't know, it just makes me happy.
So Anita, food and emotion and kind of use of food to convey emotion in characters.
Yeah, I do a lot of the comfort foods too, but I kind of do it in the opposite way, where it's sort of like comforting the negative emotions, sort of, you know, using food as a crutch, or using too much alcohol to drown your fear, your anger. But also, I also use it just to interact the characters in situations like having a meal over a strategy session, or, you know, discussing things over a glass of wine and things like that. So it's kind of, it's more of like bringing the characters together emotionally over the food is what I like to do with it.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of, there's that joke in some ways in a lot of television, fantasy and non-fantasy, where characters are always preparing food. There's always that scene where someone pours both, if someone's having a deep discussion with someone, they pour them both a drink, or you meet in a cafe, and of course, because you need something for people to be doing, so that it's almost like you feel like, okay, I'm going to break up this dialogue with something like, he took a sip of wine, or she ate some bread, because you're feeling, so it is a really useful crutch for that kind of.
And also the characters do have to eat or they die, so you got to feed them sometime.
But yeah, it's that. So I mean, yeah, another thing I was thinking about was kind of food as, I guess, coming into the comfort thing as well, but that sort of sense of food as childhood, or that people eating something. I guess that somehow the tavern scene with the stew really builds into that kind of, you know, you're on this kind of terrible adventure, something, and I guess in urban fantasy, maybe a kind of meal in a diner is the similar thing, that kind of, you're having that moment where you're free, whatever your terrible burdens are, or whatever the terrible enemy is that's chasing you, you're stopping for a meal, and even if it's not a very nice meal, you're stopping, and it's kind of
it's something familiar. And that's like I was mentioning, the character who cooks when he's nervous, he does that because it's something familiar. He can connect with that instead of the weird magic stuff he has no clue about and that scares him. He cooks so he has something to concentrate on, to connect with.
Right, I've just discovered we only have 3 minutes, whereas I thought we had.
He's
18
wrong. He's just
trying
to yank us off the stage. We have 18 minutes, Ryan.
Yes, because there are 2 cool questions. Someone,
no, we're not done talking.
Not done.
Joy Pixie is asking examples or advice on how to write a scene with a character making or eating food that wonderfully communicates something about their character and or their culture or background, which in some ways, I mean, it's sort of similar to the notion of food and emotion, and that using food to show what's going on in the character emotionally. But that's a sort of slightly sort of using food to talk about character's background. We have 15 minutes. Good. No.
Ryan says, I'm so wrong. I'm so wrong. It was very dramatic. It's okay, Ryan.
We're all good.
Virginia has confirmed we have 15 minutes. If Virginia says, then.
Hey, I thought this was supposed to be PG, Ryan. Ooh.
So, start with this time. Anita, let's start with you. Food is a way of communicating something about a character's background or a character's culture, whether kind of their personal background or their cultural background.
Well, you know, the easy answer for that is, you know, what kind of food are they preparing? Because it's whatever, countries have different sorts of food. So, and cultures have different sorts of food. So the actual dish they're preparing can say a lot about it. And it's also, you know, what their favorite food is too can say a lot about a character. Because if someone like my wizard character, he likes to bake scones. And he's using the recipe from the previous housekeeper who he was a friend with. So he's sort of taking her legacy and keeping it alive for the rest of the group as well, which I like, because I thought that was a cute little thing for him to do. And it's like no one else thought about that in the group, like the keeping the recipe so everyone can eat the scones they all love. So it says a lot about his character, because he's always doing like little tiny things to make people's lives better.
Oh, that's lovely. Actually, that's actually really touching. That's one of those little details about a character that really makes a book for me. That kind of that's lovely. And yeah, doing it 3D is a really good way of doing it. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Rachel, using food or food preparation to present a character, something about a character's background, either them or their personal background or their cultural background.
I don't really have anything more to add to that. I mean, obviously, you can tell so much about a person by the type of food that they make, you know, a lot about their background, and also sort of how they feel about food itself, you know, whether they're reaching for the lembas bread or reaching for the 27 course meal like Anita wrote. But I think it's a really nice way to kind of share your culture in fantasy, and otherwise I don't really have anything else to say on that without rambling, so I'll end it there.
Okay, Olivia?
In regards to culture, I think, I mean, if it's a popular culture, what am I even saying? I mean, like a more commonly represented culture, there's definitely a lot of food that you're like, okay, I recognize it, like the typical tavern stew, for instance, you would recognize that. Showing, I guess, like a character's culture or even just personality can go as little as what ingredients do you use? Where do you come from? Like, is it an area that's more tropical, or does it have a more milder climate? And that can be used to reflect and say a lot. But that even goes into like food history, because food has also traveled and spices have traveled. But I like seeing people's choices in that, because it can say a lot. But it's also just knowing, I guess, food history, and that could be its own different avenue to explore. But I'm just going to mute myself. I think I hear things in my background, but that's the tangent I really wanted to say.
Yeah, no, it's those little, I guess it's those little details about things like the difference how people eat. So if we talk about scones, the difference between someone who's really, someone who's really going for it with the cream and really lashing on the cream, and then really, like, versus someone who's, very politely, kind of a little bit of cream and a little bit of jam, and very, very politely. And those little details are things like how they eat. You could presume a lot from the differences between the way those two characters just ate their scone and cream. Or in fact, you could do the opposite, where you then have the kind of, the obvious suggestion you're going to take from character one, where they're really going for it with the cream and then they're really stuffing themselves. You're going to come and flip that a bit, and that actually in other things, they're very kind of precise and dry, and, not the way you think they might be. If I tell you there's the kind of stereotype of, a woman who's going to eat a lot of cake, and actually you go around that and subvert that a bit. And there's kind of interesting stuff you can do with things like that in food. I think it's quite a neat little way of doing stuff. So Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was going to add too that, beyond culture, or in addition to culture. So my main character in my new book is a bartender, as I mentioned, and she can see the demon on your shoulder, which is, in my world, it's a sort of like a desire made real kind of a thing. And it's like this like little cloudy thing. And so she uses that as a way to take care of her customers in a sense. So she actually, to me, it was revealing on her character that she will use that to then customize drinks for her, the people that come into the bar. And so it's again, it goes into that kind of that personality type, that she's paying attention to this, that she's trying to, give them what it is that they really want from that food. And I think that can be like a little insight into personality. And then there's other characters where, you know, they just don't pay attention at all, right? And so, you know, they want something, or somebody asks for something and they just, there you go, right? And so it's that different kind of what's important to the character is revealed through how they treat food, how they serve food, how they eat food, as you mentioned, Anna. And so it's, again, food is life, right? So it's, to me, it's really an important piece of the whole setting and the whole environment that makes fantasy so much more fun in a lot of ways, because you can't necessarily rely on people to input themselves into the scene. You have to give all that extra detail, all that extra thought in how things are presented, so that the person, like your reader, can feel a part of that and feel the emotion behind that food. So that would be my extra bit.
Okay, and another question we've got, which possibly might be the kind of rounding up question. Okay, question for the panel for later. If you got to choose the manner of your demise in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, what would you choose? So, okay, my goodness, who are we going to start with? Okay, Rachel, let's start with you.
Oh, I am drowning in that river of chocolate. Like, talk about a way to go. Is there a better way to die? I don't think so. I
just wouldn't want to get sucked up the pipe. I don't know.
Yeah, that would suck. That would suck. No pun intended.
Duke of Clarence, during the English, during the Wars of the Roses, the Duke of Clarence was asked by his elder brother, and he betrayed his brother, the king. So he was asked, how do you want to die? And he said, he'd be drowned in a vat of Malmsey, because if he had to be murdered by his brother, plotting to seal the Caesar throne from his brother, he'd be drowned in a vat of wine. And simply drowning in chocolate is similar. Kind of, yeah. Well, if you really have to go, if you're going to insist, then yeah,
Yeah.
Anissa, how would you go? Any way you could go involving. Now I can't remember most of the deaths.
Yeah, I'm with Rachel. It's the river of chocolate.
Yeah.
I die with a smile on my face, and all over. Just it's like I'd be gulping the chocolate, getting it before I die. Yeah.
If you eat it fast enough, you might not even drown. You know,
But you can prolong the experience of death just to get more chocolate. I like that idea.
Now, if that was a river of fondue, oh, I would be all over that.
Oh, now that's making me think of Asterix. If anyone's read Asterix in Switzerland, there's a scene where they have an orgy, they have a fondue orgy, and that is like, yes. Okay, Olivia, how would you go?
Oh, I think Megan was, oh, never mind. She muted herself. Okay. I know the river of chocolate is probably a lot of obvious. I would probably, though, as another option, would definitely be, I'm not a gum fan, but the idea of like Veruca Salt being like, oh, I want to choose this gum. It's a whole meal. I want to keep going. I want to feel all that sensation. And then she just slowly, expands. I can relate. So it's that same thing. It's just like, I love the variety. I would want all the variety, and it would be my undoing. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay, Megan,
whole banquet.
Now, in fact, of course, we have got, beside Rachel, bags containing jelly beans, which contain an infinite number of flavors. And I believe we have been promised that this, and I want to kind of go there. We've got a couple of minutes. So that kind of, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, that use of fancy for food, which just does not taste, that kind of, there's a famous thing in England, a chef called Heston Blumenthal, who made this thing meat fruit. So it was meat puree, and it looked exactly like a tangerine. And it looked so much like a tangerine, you really thought it was a tangerine until you bit into it, apparently. And then you discovered it was meat paste. And that's
from the UK.
Yeah. This is that kind of, apparently it's a Tudor banqueting dish. It's a sort of Tudor thing. They did that. And that kind of totally bonkers food. Okay, just.
So I was going to say, Top Chef just did a challenge. They just have a new season on, which I adore Top Chef. my whole family.
Me too.
But they did that. So they had this challenge where you had to take 2 dishes, one that were tasted completely different, but looked exactly the same. And so it wasn't quite maybe the tangerine that's made of meat, but like, it was like somebody, I can't even remember what it was, but they made like a savory thing that looked like a dessert. And I was like, oh my God, first of all, amazing. And second of all, oh, I'm not sure I can do it.
It's just such a cool thing in fantasy. I mean, that food, which is like totally like not within any kind of cultural conception that anyone can have on Earth. That's like, just bonkers food. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that. Anita? Just
Well, there's a lot of things you can delve into, like in medieval cooking, like with swan, or ancient Roman cooking with flamingo. I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to eat a flamingo. Maybe it tastes good. I don't know. And then, there's the, like, if you're going to go into like the fantasy, like the poor areas, like people eating rat or, or snake or whatever, and weird, strange things that they have to eat to survive, then there's, a lot of stuff you can do.
Olivia, in completely insane food that's just not within any kind of cultural norms that we can really think of.
Oh man. I mean, I've seen a lot of cooking shows. I'm trying to think for books though. It's been a little while on that one. But I just love seeing I love seeing it. When I see it, I'm like, oh yes. I would at least try it once. So I'm not afraid. But I don't have any other thoughts on that.
Is that something, maybe that's something we ought to do more of in fantasy? We often use magic and things for all kinds of really, there are those lovely scenes where you use magic for something totally the frivolous magic scene, the scene when you're just going to write about, I have a massive scene in the Court of Broken Knives to just write about someone doing magic tricks with light, just because I wanted to write this massive description of someone doing magic tricks with light, and like basically describing like magic fireworks. And we have lots of that kind of, again, Gandalf's fireworks and stuff. So maybe we ought to do more of that, just like completely bonkers. Now I'm going to present you with a magician, like the Harry Potter dessert table, but just taking it up totally to kind of like, this is a chocolate frog. Actually, when you bite it, it tastes like something else.
Frog?
Yes. Someone said, we've got in the comments that turducken, which is bonkers. So I mean, how big could you go? Like, you're going to take turducken and then you could magically like scale it up. Like you could have some.
I was gonna say my family's actually had turducken, so I get it.
I'm sorry.
It was once. It was a long time ago. I don't think it was completely successful, but my dad's one of those people too. Who's like, yeah, I gotta try these things. So we've actually had turducken once for Thanksgiving. So funny that was brought up.
And we kind of because we kind of accept, like, in Game of Thrones, they're all eating like normal food. Basically, they're all eating like meat, like normal meat. But like, why can't they eat direwolf? Why can't they eat kind of North of the Wall? Why aren't they eating mammoth? That kind of, let's just maybe we ought to be a bit more adventurous. But we have a couple of minutes left, and I believe we are promised, Rachel, we're eating any jelly beans whose flavors human mind should not wot of on live television. Rachel,
I'm gonna spin this, okay? We'll spin it. Here's a reminder of all the crap that's on it.
What have we got? Can we buttered popcorn, or what have we got here?
Do you want me to read it to you really fast?
Yes, read it out.
It's buttered popcorn or rotten egg, chocolate pudding or dog food, toasted marshmallow or stink bug, coconut or spoiled milk, tutti frutti or stinky socks. And like you can see, so they'll look, oh gosh, I don't even know what I'm pointing at, whatever. You pick one up and you don't know whether it's the tutti frutti or the stinky socks is how this works. Peach or barf, birthday cake or dirty dishwasher, berry or toothpaste, strawberry banana smoothie or dead fish, juicy pear or booger. I'm gonna spin now. Oh, yay! I get buttered popcorn or rotten egg. Are we super excited about this? I'm super excited. I'm opening up my little package right now.
Maybe the kids you were playing with lied. Maybe they did get all the junky flavors.
No,
Okay.
they're pretty dramatic. They're pretty dramatic. So, all right. Well, cheers, ladies. It was really nice talking to you. This is delicious. I love it so much. I'll be right back. Bye, everybody.
Oh
my God.
Oh no. Oh.
Boogers.
Oh.
I didn't just spit that out. Don't worry about it. And on that devastating
On
note.
that
Oh.
I'm afraid to say I think we're going to have to crown Rachel our star baker for doing that. For Rachel eating a egg jelly bean live on international television. It's just been a yeah. I've done serious panels. I've done grimdark panels. I've never done a panel about cake, which has ended with someone eating a rotten egg flavored jelly bean live on television.
It might have been booger. I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness.
And this has been a completely bonkers panel, and I'm thanking everyone. Thank him so much to my wonderful participants for turning up, tailing us the most delicious foodstuffs, making us so hungry, talking about the most wonderful food stuff, making everything. Everybody's now going to go and rate and read the Dragon Riders of Pern again to get those pies. And I think everyone here probably wants a cup of coffee now. And pancakes with Tyrion Lannister, breakfast with Tyrion Lannister is would definitely be on my bucket list where it could be achievable. And it's been a great panel. Thank you so much. So go and buy everybody's books and read about those wonderful food stuffs, everyone. And whatever time of day or night it is, go away and cook something amazing or drink something amazing and raise a toast to our fantastic panelists. So Anissa, Rachel, Olivia, and Megan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.